Hey, good morning. Welcome. Glad you decided to tune in this morning. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, we still haven't because I'm here and you're there. But my name's Garry. I'm one of the pastors here. And welcome. Just a quick reminder, send pictures in. They're so awesome for us to look at and to put up on the pre-service roll just before the live stream goes live to let us know that we are connected even though we're apart. So make sure you send some of those in. The address is on your screen. And a big thank you to Russ who came up this morning from Quanos. These guys are like super busy trying to pull camp off virtually and everything else. So we really appreciate you, Russ, coming up and leading music for us this morning. So thanks again. Hey, we kicked off a new series last week called Emerge, where, for the last few months we've been locked up in our homes, businesses have been shut down, but we're starting to reopen and we're slowly beginning to be allowed to emerge from our homes. And for a lot of us, we're longing for our old normal, for life to get back to the way it was, but we're looking at the idea that maybe through this pandemic, this shutdown, this quarantine, it's been a time for us to really reevaluate what was and maybe wasn't working in our old normal as we emerge into a new normal. And today, as if you didn't figure it out, we're going to be looking at slowing down. This past week, I came across a really interesting article about what the average person will spend time doing over their lifetime. And for the sake of this article, the author used 80 years as an average lifespan, okay? So everything was based on 80 years. Here's what they figured out. Check this out. According to this article, you and I, on average, will spend 33 years in bed. Out of those 33 years, 26 of them will be actually sleeping, and the other 7, well, they're going to be spent trying to get to sleep. I don't know what you were thinking, but trying to get to sleep. We'll spend just over 13 years of our lives at work. And here's one that kind of, it's one of those things that when you hear it, you're just like, I wish that wasn't true, but here it is. They figured out that we'll spend just over 11 years looking at screens. Phones, tablets, TVs. I mean, think about that for a second. We'll also spend 3 years in meetings. More now if you're part of our online connection groups with Zoom meetings. If you haven't signed up for one of those, make sure you do. You can sign up online. We'll get you plugged in. Lots of people are taking advantage of that. It's a great time to just hang out with old friends, make some new ones. And we'll spend 5 years waiting in some kind of lineup. And I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that, if we really take a step back and we look at, not just how we spend our time there, what our average week looks like. Before COVID-19 hit, I would suffice it to say that for a lot of us, it kind of looked like this. We spent probably 40 to 50 hours of the week at work, possibly more if there was a deadline or some kind of project going on that needed our attention. And it only got magnified if you were a mom or a dad because, man, if you've got kids, you got to get them up out of bed, you got to feed them breakfast, get them ready for school, get them out the door, get them into the car so you can drop them off at school. Before you know it, you look at the watch and it's like school's over, you got to go pick them up. And then it's time to, run them all over town, get them to their music, dance, or karate lessons, or off to soccer, hockey, volleyball, or basketball practice. And maybe you're one of those super energetic parents and you even coach or teach some of those things. And between all of that is the quality time that you want to spend as a parent with your child. And we all know how important those 2 minutes are, right? And on top of all that, you have shopping, cleaning the house, taking out the garbage, washing the car, mowing the lawn, fixing the leaky socket, cleaning out the gutters, picking up after Rover, and one other thing. You might have this thing on the side called a marriage or a relationship. That takes a little bit of time, no? And here's the thing, you may be sitting there thinking, oh man, I remember those days. I don't have kids anymore. Well, that doesn't stop there, does it? No, you're not exempt. You've got commitments and places to go and things to do that keep you hopping day to day. Get this, shortly after my dad retired, he moved over from the mainland with my mom to be around the grandkids and stuff. And one day we were over at their house having coffee. And I asked him how he was doing with retirement because, you know, especially men, when they retire, they kind of have a hard time fitting into retirement because they feel like, oh, I don't really have a purpose or whatever. Oh, not my dad. So I asked him, I said, how you doing, Dad, with this whole retirement thing? And he looks at me, and I'll never forget what he said. He goes, son, he goes, I'm so busy, I have no idea how I fit work into my schedule before. I mean, we're busy. I'm busy, you're busy. But here's the thing. If we're really honest, we're too busy. At the end of the day, though, that's life, isn't it? It's your life, it's my life. And oftentimes it feels like we are just being pulled apart in so many different directions. And so what do? Do we slow down? No, we speed up. Meyer Friedman is a cardiologist, and cardiologists have kind of been in my part of my story for the last little bit here, but he's known for coining the phrase type A personality. You're probably familiar with that. It describes people who are typically driven, goal-oriented, very focused on achievement, things like that. And here's what he found. As he studied heart disease, he discovered a clear connection between a fast-paced and frenetic life to the condition of one's heart. And here's what he wrote. He said, hurry is a sickness. It's a continuous struggle and unremitting attempt to accomplish or achieve more and more things or to participate in more and more events. And here's the kicker. This is where we all get tripped up. In less and less time. For most of us, our days are just a whirlwind from the time we get up to the time we go to bed. And the thought of slowing down, well, it's comedic. It's just not going to happen. Here's another quote from another book I read. It's called Good Busy. I mean, if you go around and ask people, you know, how they're doing, hey, how you doing? It's, you know, we usually answer, oh, busy. Busy. It's a good busy, though, right? Well, she wrote this book. She did a study on trying to uncover why people are so inclined to be busy. And here's what she discovered. She said, there is a lot of shame and guilt surrounding time. People feel that they should do better. They feel an enormous pressure to be productive and to live a meaningful life. And then she goes on to say that we don't want to be seen as underachievers. And so we fill our schedules indiscriminately, and we just keep adding one thing after another, and we usually do it without taking anything else out. And you know how the saying goes, when we say yes to something, we are inevitably saying no to something else. I mean, we can't do it all, but man, we sure try, don't we? And so the question becomes, do we want that moving forward as we emerge from our homes and get back to life? You know, how do we combat this societal pressure and our natural tendency to cram and jam our schedules to the max? Well, interestingly, the story has a lot to say about that. And there's a particular story that has some penetrating insights into the whole issue of being busy, jamming our schedules, and what we deem important and not important. This story takes place when Jesus, he's kind of getting close to the peak of his popularity. A lot of people have heard him teach. They've heard about these miracles he's pulled off. And so he's traveling from one town to another, and he's got his closest followers with him, his disciples. And as they're making their way from one town to another, they are invited into the home of two sisters named Mary and Martha. Okay, so that's a backdrop to the story. And here's how it's recorded. Listen to this. It says, as Jesus and his disciples, his closest followers, were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Now, back in that day and age, when all this took place, the women of the home were kind of in charge of the food and all that type of stuff. And it was expected of them to take care of that stuff, to kind of work in the background. And that's what Martha's doing. She's running around making all these preparations. And then it says this, she came to him, Jesus, and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. I'm not sure about you, but if I'm totally honest, I admire Martha. I mean, she's got a great work ethic. She's a doer. She was surrounded by things that needed to be done, things that needed to be organized, managed, made, cared for, and she just jumped in and tackled them. Every single one of them. That's me. You know, as I read this story, if I identify with anyone, it's her. That's me. Man, if I see something that needs to be done, I just hop in and start doing it. And it's often at the peril of those around me. Because when I get focused on a task, I can easily prioritize it over people. Here's how it shows up for me. One Sunday, quite a few years ago, we were at the theater. This is before we made the move to the conference center and then back to the theater. And I was on the takedown team, and I was rolling one of the carts. It was either the coffee cart or one of the kids' place carts from the lobby down that long hallway, down to the storage room in Theater 8, way at the other end of the hall. So I'm pushing this thing, and I pass these two guys that are standing, leaning against the wall in the hallway, talking. And as I walked by, I heard one of them say, look out, Gary's on a mission. And he's got that look on his face that basically says, get out of my way or I'm going to run you over. Now, the first thought that went through my mind was, I love you. Thanks for coming. It's so great to see you. Man, I wish that was the thought that went through my head. Here's the thought that went through my head. I was like, as I hear this, I'm going, dude, there's an expression that says many hands make light work. Don't know if you've heard of it. But maybe instead of standing around with your hands in your pocket and your chin wagging, you could help me out so we could all get this done. And maybe I could hang around and do some chatting. And I'm a pastor. Aren't you glad you go to this church? I did what Martha did. I was feeling hurried, harried, and annoyed that these two guys weren't helping me. Jesus said to her, Martha, you are distracted by many things. You know, the Greek word that's used in that verse for distracted is the word perispou. And it means to drag around something. And I would suggest that the something that a lot of us drag around is a mindset steeped in expectations. It's the mindset that whispers to us that we've got to run faster, do more, say yes to this and yes to that, volunteer here, just do more and more and more. Martha was distracted by many things, and I think if we're honest, if we're really honest, that's true for most of us. We're distracted. And we get distracted by the things that really don't matter, and we miss out on the things that do. There's a book that came out years back in 1960s, late 60s, I think. And it was titled Freedom from the Tyranny of Urgent, written by a guy named Charles Hummel. It became the gold standard that you would give to any salesperson or somebody that was in charge of their own time, to manage their time. Listen to what he wrote. He said, your greatest danger, my greatest danger, is letting the urgent things crowd out the important. Your greatest danger is letting the urgent things crowd out the important. You might be thinking, well, what's the difference? Glad you asked. Here's the difference. Important things don't have to be done today. They don't even have to be done tomorrow, or this week, or this month. Important things don't scream for our attention. They're just kind of there. Important things could be things like a visit or a coffee with a friend, time spent with your son or daughter, playing catch, having tea, whatever it happens to be. Spending time with your significant other. Time spent developing yourself scholastically or spiritually. Those are all important things. But they don't scream for our attention. Urgent things, on the other hand, they scream loud and clear, don't they? They holler at us to respond, to act, and to move, and to do it now. Answer the phone. Make the call. Respond to that email. Answer that text. Make the deadline. Reach the quota. Sign up for this. Get your kids involved in that. And what happens is over time, these urgent things that are screaming at us begin to own us and rob us of the beauty of what our lives are meant to be. Jesus turned to Martha and said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset over many things. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. And so what did Mary choose that was so important? She took time away from all the noise and the chaos of the urgent things that were screaming at her to do the important thing, which was to sit at the feet of Jesus and just spend time with him. Mary chose the important over the urgent. But if you're like me, you know what I find? That is hard. Because sitting still, spending time with God, it just seems so counterproductive. A waste of time almost. And so often, we don't. We'll tell ourselves, I need to do that, but then the urgent things creep in and we put it off. As I was putting this talk together, I received an email with a link to an article titled 8 Habits People Want to Keep Post-Lockdown. And right away it grabbed my attention because that's kind of what this whole series is about. It's about learning reevaluating what was working and what wasn't working in our old lives and making the necessary changes as we move forward. That's exactly what this article was about. And one of the top valued changes, this author of this article interviewed hundreds of people from around the world. Right at the top was this: slowing down. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh man, this is unbelievable. And then I read this. Here's what one of the respondents to this article wrote. They said this: quarantine has forced me to slow down in ways I haven't since I was a kid. From high school and college through my 20s and a master's degree program, I have been on the go constantly. I always said I was the one who liked to be busy, but the last 2 months of forced slowdown has really called on me to think about what I want my life to look like moving forward. And so I'm trying to figure out what it would look like to intentionally build space into my life to breathe, reflect, and focus on the most important aspects of my life. It's unbelievable. You know, when you and I get caught up in our schedules, we fall into that trap of busyness, thinking that that's a sign of success. Man, it can be so hard to find just even a few minutes to spend with God. But finding those few moments is so important if we want to have any hope of developing and growing our relationship with the God who dreamt us into existence, loves us beyond anything we could ever imagine. And so to wrap up today, I want to throw out a challenge to you. And you guys are awesome when it comes to challenges. Every time we throw a challenge out, you guys step up to the plate. So I know that you're going to be up for this, okay? And what I want to do is just give you some ideas that could help you intentionally begin to instill this habit of spending some quiet time with God before we emerge back into the old normal and life starts nipping at our heels. One of the things that I've done for most of my life is I've read this thing called The Daily Bread. When we made it the theater, they're usually, you can find them just outside Theater 6 or in the lobby on the information table. Obviously, we're not meeting right now, but here's the thing. You can download it. Just go to the address on the screen, ourdailybread.org, and you can actually subscribe, and they'll throw it right in your email box every day. And so, do that, and then read it. Commit to read that every day for 30 days. And just see if you can develop that habit. Do it while you're having your breakfast, your morning coffee, whatever it is. On your computer or phone or tablet, download one of the many Bible apps that are available for free. One that is extremely popular is YouVersion. It's free. What I like about it is it has hundreds and hundreds of daily reading plans to choose from that just literally take a few minutes a day, but could set up your whole day to be peaceful and kind of purposeful. So give it a shot. Or, if you haven't done this already, download the Meeting Place app. Yeah, we have our own app. And once you do, click on the badge that says This Sunday. That will take you to the welcome page, where at the very bottom, you'll see, it's another booklet that we hand out, but obviously we can't right now because we're not together. But it's called Echoes and Grace. And it's full of ancient prayers that have been prayed by people, countless people over the centuries. And so you could download that and read through that on a daily basis, or just pick one prayer a day, whatever works for you. And maybe you've got your own favorite thing that you do, or some little devotional booklet or whatever. And if you do, feel free to share that in the chat. Just put it in there. Hey, this is what I do. We'd love to hear from you. And you may encourage someone to try that. So make sure you take advantage of that. One of my favorites is, it's an app called Pray As You Go. It's like this little mini podcast. It starts with a song to kind of get you in the mood, and then a verse or a passage of scripture is read by a narrator. And as you listen, you're invited to just let the words flow over you. And you can listen to it on your computer, you can download it on your phone, your tablet, whatever you want to do. But I remember when I was first introduced to it, a friend of mine sent me the link because they knew what I was battling at the time, and it was the beast of busyness. I was so wound up with things that I had to get done, and they could see it. And so they thought, you know what? This might help. And so they sent it to me. They said, this short devotional might help you. So I clicked on the link, and that's when I saw that this short devotional was 14 minutes long. And I'm thinking, 14 minutes? I don't have 14 minutes. I'm too busy. And that's what happens when we get busy, right? And I just contemplated deleting it, but then I thought, you know what? They took the time to send it to me. Maybe there's something here. I listened to it. Click the play button. About 4 minutes in, man, my foot's tapping. I'm just like, oh, come on. Like, I got to get through this thing. It was a passage that I had read countless times, heard countless times, spoken on at the church countless times. I kind of knew what the story was all about, and so I was just tempted to go, yeah, I've heard it, and skip right through it. And just before I was going to close my browser, I heard these 4 words from these verses. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Heard those words, like I say, countless times. But this time they just grabbed me. And what came to light for me was the very thing that was driving my busyness, fear. I was afraid that I would let someone down. You guys, leadership team, staff team, my family. I was afraid I would disappoint or be a disappointment to someone or maybe even myself. And so I sat there and I just let these words, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. It's going to be okay. And in a way, I did what Mary did. I just kind of sat there and just let the words of Jesus kind of roll over me. You know what? It was really interesting what happened. All the angst and the stress that I was feeling from being busy kind of just leaked out of me. And it just changed the whole trajectory of not just my day and my week, but I've been listening to it ever since. And to this day, there's sometimes I look at it and I go, I don't really have time for this, but it's those days that I listen to it, I go, man, am I glad I listened to that. I don't know what's going to work best for you. I will say this, start slow. Just start with a few minutes, and then if you want to build on that, build on that. But just carve out some time. Why we have this pause that this COVID-19 has given us. So when we emerge, that is a habit that we can take forward and be better for it moving forward. Really glad you're here with us. I invite you to pray with me. God, it's so hard to just stop and be quiet. Be quiet before you and hear what you have to say to us. There's so many things clamoring for our time and attention. And we just want to run here, there, and everywhere. And we have the best of intentions that we'll do it eventually. Just give us the courage to just say, no, I'm going to unplug from this. This is a perfect time for me to start this. Life has slowed down for most of us. And before we go back into a full restart and start running around, that this could be a habit that we could take with us. I know you don't ask us to do it alone. You're there with us. And so we just ask that you would help us to do that. We just thank you for everyone that's tuning in here. Thank you for loving us. We pray this in your name. Amen.